Greetings, Andy here again, and this is another video which is a sort of bit of a continuation of a couple I did a few months ago under the title Vinyl Chain Challenge, which was a bit of a sort of thread going on at the time. 20 albums, which I did across 2 episodes, where through some sort of random connection you link one to the next, and I got to the end of it. I quite enjoyed doing it, so I did say I might at some point do another one. So here I am. I'm now doing then numbers 21 to 30, and I'm starting off with where I finished on the last one, so I can continue. And that was the album Purple Rain by Prince, of course. So this was my number 20. And from here, I lots of options, purple, deep purple. There's lots of stuff I could have done on here. But I'm going to pick the word rain and make the link from that. And rain being sort of like bad weather and storms and stuff like that. And I'm going to Riders on the Storm by The Doors, which is on their fabulous album LA Woman from, was it late 60s, early 70s? I can't remember. It was around 1970, give or take. And some great I mean, it's an all killer. And this is a later reissue, but with the same packaging as the original. So where do we go from Door? I mean, lots of stuff: Doors, opening, closing, LA, women, lots of options here. But I'm going with Jim Morrison. That's the singer there who famously died in Paris and was buried there. And originally I was going to do a Paris link, but then I remembered the fabulous Mogwai track, "I'm Jim Morrison, I'm Dead," which appears on this album, The Hawk is Howling, which is a great album from, I can't remember when it was, 2007, 8, something like that. It was sort of in there, you might say it was in the middle of their discography. And I believe it sort of was starting out as being a soundtrack assignment, which then got cancelled. So they continued to make the album, as a studio album, released it as a studio album, and it does. It's not my favourite of theirs because it does sort of fall somewhere between a studio and the feel of a studio and the feel of a soundtrack. But I mean, to me, Mogwai haven't made a Duff album, so it's still a great album, and that is a fabulous track. So where do we go from here? Well, Mogwai, I think wasn't he one of the last Mohicans? So I was thinking Mohican punk, hairstyle and stuff like that. They come from Glasgow, so there's lots of connections there. But I'm going to keep the connection with the name, the Hawk. And of course, the Hawk is a bird of prey. A track called Bird of Prey appeared on Uriah Heep's second album, Salisbury. And this is a picture disc, as you can see, and it's got the original artwork from the cover when it was released. This is a UK cover. I think the US cover of Salisbury didn't have the tank on it, but and obviously Salisbury, it's a reference to Salisbury Plain, where a massive military area for tank practice and all that sort of stuff. This, as I say, was their second album. They've done loads more than 4 albums, but I've got their first 4 albums on this series of picture discs, and they're all great. And I've also have an original vinyl copy of Uriah Heep Live, which was recorded and released early '73. And it was recorded at Birmingham Town Hall in January '73, and I went to that gig. It was a couple of weeks before my 16th birthday, so my teenage voice is on that album somewhere. Anyway, Uriah Heep, Salisbury, so lots of links here possible. Salisbury Plain, Stonehenge, Salisbury Cathedral. So, but I'm going to stick with the literary theme. So Uriah Heep is a character in a Dickens character. I think it was David Copperfield. So I'm going to stick with a literary connection and go with J.R.R. Tolkien, The Silmarillion, which was basically what the band name Marillion was based on. And this is their 94, I think it was, album Brave, which for many is considered to be their finest album. Certainly it's the one I think is best. So this is one of the many albums from what you might call their second phase. So Marillion in the 80s were led by a guy called Fish, very distinctive Scottish vocals, who left, can't remember when, but it was around the end of the 80s. And the vocal duties were picked up by one Steve Hogarth, who has continued to this day. And this is a really good album. This particular version was a remaster by Stephen Wilson, which was released in 2018. So, lots of connections there. So I'm going to go with, again, names, and the name Brave, and a play on that, because the opposite of brave, of course, is afraid or fearful. So I'm going with the word fear. And the new release, this is an opportunity to bring a pretty new record in, and this was from a 2022 release last year, and it's Jack White, Fear of the Dawn. So this is an interesting album. It was actually he released two, and they're sort of companion albums. The other one was called Entering Heaven Alive, and that one is I'm not going to dwell on it here, but that one basically was quite acoustic and more gentle, as a sort of juxtapose of this one, which is much more raucous, more heavy. It's sort of, this one reminds me a bit of the White Stripes. It's got that sort of garage rock sort of feel, and it didn't quite make my number 10 for last year, but it was, I think, my number 11 with its companion. And from here, I'm going to actually stick. This is the least cryptic of them, because I'm going to stick with Fear as a name, and I'm going to go with Fear of a Blank Planet by Porcupine Tree. So, it was I could have flown through from the previous one, the link with Stephen Wilson as well. But again, this is considered, I think this was 2007 it first came out. This is another later reissue, which was remastered by himself, Stephen Wilson, not surprisingly. And it's a great one. And I actually saw them last year, in November last year. They were sort of just finishing a tour. I think the last date was in London, which I went to. And I enjoyed the concert, but I couldn't see them. That was the downside, because Wilson, right at the beginning, invited everyone to stand up for the duration of the whole thing. And I was way back and way up. And everyone in front of me was much taller, and I just couldn't see through them. And my feet were killing me. So I ended up sitting down for most of it and listening rather than watching, which is a shame. But anyway, so where do we go from Fear of a Blank Planet? Well, the second side B, is taken up by an epic track, 18 minute track called Anista Ties. Which is a staple of their live shows, one of their classic albums. And Anista Ties, my first thought was numb, uncomfortably numb, and I thought, well, I could put sort of some Floyd in there, but then I thought it's a bit bloody obvious, isn't it? Anista Ties and numb. So I'm going with a musical connection from that particular track, because there's a guitar solo on it, obviously on the studio version, which was actually played by Alex Lifeson of Rush, famously. So I'm going to make a connection via Lifeson to Rush and their seminal album from 1981, Moving Pictures. And this was the box set, which was released in 2021 to mark their 40th anniversary. I'm not sure if you can see it there, but it's got a little 40 on there. I bought this last year, and you know I got it at a decent discount. So I do sort of like a box set, but I very rarely will pay the full whack for them. And this has got sort of lots of stuff. They're mostly live ones. So I'm not sure how many records it's got on there. 5 by the look of it. So where do we go from moving pictures? Well, you know, movies. I'm going from movies to the cinema show, which of course is a fabulous track on Genesis, Selling England by the Pound, and another 73. It was a seminal year for me. 73 was. I think on balance I marginally prefer Foxtrot to that, but that's probably because it's got sort of more emotional connections and it's got the epic Suppers Ready on it. But this probably musically is technically better. I just like Foxtrot just a tad more, but hardly anything. And of course this is including their classic lineup at the time with Gabriel and Hackett, Collins, Rutherford, Banks, and you know, who produced in my humble their best run of albums. And obviously soon after, I think the one after this was The Lamb Lies Down in Broadway, and then Gabriel left, and then a sort of a couple of an album or two after that, Hackett left. I think they chucked him out, to be honest, which was a bit stupid because in my humble, after Hackett left, Genesis were a bit crap, and they didn't produce anything that I considered worth getting. And if I've offended any late Genesis fans, I do apologise. So I'm sticking with the Genesis connection from that album and Steve Hackett's Spectral Mornings. And Hackett, this is his third album. I think it was 79. This came out, third solo album, and again one which is considered by many to be his finest one. Certainly I like it. And Hackett is still touring. He plays. He's produced. He does a tour which tends to be themed around his own life stuff and one of the Genesis album, and often produces a video or Blu-ray of them. And I got one. I'm desperately trying to think what was on it. It was Spectral Mornings, and I think it was Foxtrot. I haven't watched it for ages. I really ought to dig it out. You know, it was a great, and there's loads of flicks on YouTube of those concerts, so well worth watching if you're remotely into Genesis. So this was number 29. So for our last one, I'm going to stick with the name. So Spectral Mornings. I'm going to go from Spectral Mornings to The Morning of Our Life, and Jonathan Richmond and the Modern Lovers, and their live album Modern Lovers Live, which I think was 77, was it, or maybe 78, released around then. This is an original I bought at the time. I absolutely love this. I still play it. It makes me smile every time, and it's got some. I mean, it's pop. It's not exactly rock, but it's just really, really good pop. You know, I'm a Little Aeroplane, Hey Yeah Little Insect, Egyptian Reggae, Ice Cream Man, I'm a Little Dinosaur, My Little Kukenhuken, New England, and of course it finishes with the fabulous Morning of Our Lives. I very nearly started with a live album. My original thought was to go from Purple Rain to Deep Purple and live in Japan, because there are so many connections from Japan you could make afterwards. But anyway, I decided that was a bit too obvious, and I sort of meandered my way through to another live album to finish on, number 30. So there you go. If I do another one of these, which I might well do because I quite like them, then it will be a link from this. So I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching. Cheers.